Is the American dream really dead? If so, when did it die, and who killed it? In 1933, James Truslow Adams wrote, "The struggle of each against all for the dazzling prizes destroyed both our private ideals and our sense of social obligation." He warned that his country was trading a good life for the good life. Greed above principles. But it was not social philosopher Adams who triggered a mass realization in America and beyond that Camelot was falling. It was a hard-drinking, brilliant, sometimes reckless novelist. Francis Scott Key Fitzgerald, born in 1896 in St. Paul, Minnesota, became one of the defining voices of early 20th century America. His life mirrored his fiction, a blend of dazzling success and deep personal struggle. Fitzgerald attended prestigious Princeton University but never graduated, yet his first novel, This Side of Paradise, made him an instant celebrity in 1920. He and Zelda Sayre became icons of the Jazz Age, living a life of glamour and excess that inspired much of his work. But behind the wild parties, drunken public stunts, and circle of famous friends, Fitzgerald battled to balance artistic ambition with the need to fund their extravagant lifestyle, often writing short stories purely for much-needed money. His flagship novel, The Great Gatsby, published in 1925, is now a classic, but it was a commercial disappointment at the time. As the decade ended, Zelda's mental health declined. Fitzgerald struggled with alcoholism, and their financial troubles mounted. He spent his final years in Hollywood convinced that he was a failure. Following a heart attack, he died suddenly, aged just 44. Only after his death did critics and readers rediscover his work, recognizing The Great Gatsby as a timeless meditation on the American dream. Fitzgerald coined the term Jazz Age to describe the 1920s, a decade of economic boom, cultural change, and social liberation after World War I. New industries, credit, and consumer goods created a sense of limitless possibility. Women gained the right to vote, and among them so-called flappers challenged old norms, embracing independence, outrageous social behavior, and jazz music. Yet beneath the excitement, prohibition, a federal ban on all alcohol, was fueling a criminal underworld and blurring the lines between old money and new, often black market fortunes. Speakeasies, illegal drinking clubs, and bootleggers, traders in outlawed alcohol, became symbols of the era's glamour and lawlessness. Fitzgerald saw through the glitter, exposing the era's moral emptiness and social anxieties. In The Great Gatsby, a world of wealth and excess is set against a backdrop of deep social divides and hidden despair. His novels capture both the energy and the underlying hollowness of the Jazz Age. Fitzgerald's work remains both a celebration and a warning about the era's excesses, and a century on, eerily captures many of contemporary America's elephant-in-the-room issues. The American dream, though not yet named, was central to Fitzgerald's era. In essence, it was the belief that anyone could achieve a better life through ability and effort. Its roots can be traced back to the Declaration of Independence and the promise of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For generations, this ideal drew immigrants seeking opportunity and upward social mobility. By the early 1900s, however, the dream was shifting, narrowing. Industrialization and consumerism began to equate happiness with material success. Evolving advertising and mass marketing suggested that fulfillment could be bought. Fitzgerald's work critiques this new materialistic version of the dream. By the time the term American dream was popularized in the 1930s, its original meaning was already being lost. The pursuit of wealth as an end in itself had begun to overshadow ideals of quality, personal fulfillment, noble achievement, and social responsibility. With brilliant storytelling, The Great Gatsby examines the consequences of the dream being reduced to the pursuit of riches alone. Thus, the novel is Fitzgerald's devastating portrait of the American dream gone wrong. J. Gatsby, born poor, reinvents himself and amasses a fortune, hoping to win back the beautiful Daisy Buchanan, a symbol of both old money and lost love. Gatsby's belief that wealth can buy happiness and erase the past is the novel's central illusion. But despite his lavish parties and flaunted riches, Gatsby remains an outsider, never accepted by the old money elite. His fortune itself, built on crime, highlights the moral compromises behind much new wealth. The novel's geography, West Egg for the newly rich, East Egg for the aristocracy, symbolizes America's rigid social barriers. Gatsby's dream is finally destroyed by both class divisions and the emptiness of his goal. Daisy turns out to be shallow, and ultimately chooses security over love. J. Gatsby's tragic, violent end and the subsequent indifference of those around him is Fitzgerald's final verdict on the American dream. His novel warns that any dream built on materialism and nostalgia is doomed to failure. Gatsby's story is one of literature's most famous cautionary tales about the limits of ambition in a society defined by class and wealth. Its author exposed the cost of chasing an illusion, in the process demonstrating remarkable foresight. Fitzgerald recognized the dangers of America's obsession with wealth long before the catastrophic Wall Street crash of 1929. In The Great Gatsby, nearly every character is shaped by money. Tom and Daisy Buchanan's inherited riches shield them from consequences, making them careless and morally empty. Fitzgerald's 1929 story, The Swimmers, predicted that the American dream would become a cruel illusion, attainable only by a privileged few. He wrote that for the top 1% the dream might come true, but for the rest, only discontent awaited. This division, with stunning accuracy, prefigured today's situation of growing inequality. Consistently, Fitzgerald's villains preach that money is power and equate wealth with virtue, a philosophy he saw as corrupting. Adultery in his stories becomes a metaphor for broken promises and the betrayal of ideals. And Fitzgerald warned that a society built on speculative wealth and moral indifference was unsustainable and doomed to destroy itself. While the Jazz Age celebrated excess, Fitzgerald saw the cracks beneath the surface. Hence, his work has stood for a century as a prophetic critique of materialism's corrosive effects. Fitzgerald's analysis has proved so enduring that economists now use the expression the Great Gatsby curve to describe the link between inequality and low social mobility. In countries with wide income gaps, it's harder for children from poor families to rise, even if they are possessed of outstanding intelligence and a tenacious work ethic. Ironically, the U.S., so often lauded as the land of opportunity, now ranks high on this curve, with both high inequality and low mobility. 100 years on, the dream Gatsby chased is statistically less attainable today than ever. The novel's social barriers are mirrored in real economic data. Concentrated wealth creates rigid class divisions. East Egg and West Egg aren't just fiction. They reflect persistent social realities which in today's America are more recognizable than ever. Today's The Great Gatsby curve confirms Fitzgerald's warning. Extreme inequality undermines the American dream. His cautionary tale remains urgent and relevant in today's society because its climax contains the grim warning symbolized by Gatsby's sudden violent death, the fruit of accumulated karma. Fitzgerald's vision of a society divided by class and wealth in the 1920s is strikingly applicable to the contemporary United States. The Great Gatsby shows the gap between East Egg's aristocracy and West Egg's newcomers as absolute. But the Valley of Ashes, home to the working class, reveals an even deeper divide. Characters like George and Myrtle Wilson are trapped by poverty and ultimately destroyed by the indifference of the rich. Today, economic inequality has created a new Gilded Age, with the ultra-wealthy living in isolation from the struggles of most Americans. The Valley of Ashes has modern parallels in struggling towns and neglected neighborhoods. Social media amplifies materialism, pressuring people to project idealized lives, much like Gatsby's parties. This focus on curated autobiography, on image over substance, no matter how superficially satisfying, inevitably leads to personal emptiness and true social disconnection. Populist politics often tap into resentment toward elites, echoing Fitzgerald's class tensions. That sense that the system is rigged remains a powerful force, just as it was in Gatsby's world. Fitzgerald also keenly observed America's tendency to forget the lessons of its past, instead doggedly chasing a future of endless possibility. Jay Gatsby's belief that the past can be recreated is central to the novel, and ultimately to his own undoing. The story confronts the idea that the past shapes the present inescapably, from Gatsby's origins to Daisy's social ties. And Fitzgerald explored this theme in other stories he wrote, suggesting that as a people, Americans long to be unburdened by history and to always be moving forward. But astutely, he knew that ignoring the past always traps a society in cycles of repetition. Hence, The Great Gatsby ended with those now famous lines. So we beat on, boats against the current borne back ceaselessly into the past. Today, many observers see America as a future-focused culture that remains largely blind to the roots of its inequality and division. Without reckoning with its history and taking responsibility for it, any society risks repeating old mistakes. Fitzgerald's work reminds us that a sustainable dream for the future requires honest engagement with the past and not allowing manipulative political forces to rewrite evidence-based history. With the 2025 U.S. government routinely branding embarrassing revelations as fake news and countering inconvenient scientific evidence with alternative facts, his warnings about the consequences of historical amnesia seem more on point than ever. Fitzgerald's stories warn that the American dream comes true for just 1%, and that 1% who espouse a self-serving gospel of wealth simply will not share. So tragically, for the other 99%, only discontent and bitterness await, guaranteeing social unrest on a mass scale. Though The Great Gatsby was initially a commercial and critical failure, it was hailed as a masterpiece in the 1950s, when hindsight revealed its chilling and accurate prophetic truth. Despite his own sharp critique of society, Fitzgerald himself actually never completely lost faith in his country's deeper ideals. His disappointment was that of a romantic, not a cynic. He mourned the corruption of the American dream because he believed in its original promise. And beneath the surface decay, he sensed something resilient in the American character. In The Swimmers, after cataloging the nation's failings, the narrator feels gratitude for the enduring spirit of ordinary people. Fitzgerald saw the true essence of America as a willingness of the heart, a capacity for hope, belief, and generosity, which lay beyond wealth or status. Nick Carraway both admires Gatsby's gift for hope and recognizes its flaws. Fitzgerald's legacy is this dual vision. He exposed the dream's failures but also believed in its potential. His work, therefore, operates as both a warning against materialism and a call to rediscover the dream's pure gold. The promise of a better life, rooted in hope and generosity, is woven into his storytelling and continues to resonate because, regardless of his personal struggles and even ultimate sense of failure, he always chose to balance his critique of his homeland with dogged, enduring hope. One wonders how he would respond to today's America and what stories he would write for it. Have you read The Great Gatsby or seen any of its film adaptations? Please give us your critique in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to help keep world literature alive.
While F. Scott Fitzgerald chronicled the decay of the American dream in New York and Long Island, another great author documented the loss of a supposedly romantic way of life in the nation's Deep South. Meet him in episode 47.